Great to see everybody here on such a festive occasion to celebrate Chris Shelton's tenure here at Smith. I'm Lynn Oberbillig. I'm a Smith College lecturer in exercise and sports studies. It's my pleasure and honor to moderate tonight's panel, which we've titled The International Women's Sport Movement, Frontiers for the Next Decade. We're thrilled to have these both esteemed and noteworthy set of panelists that are all colleagues and friends of Chris in her travels throughout the years. We have Professor Emeritus, Presidents of the Women's Sport International, past President of the National Association for Girls and Women's Sport. We have soccer coaches. We have a former member of the Japanese national soccer team. We have a competitive alpine skiing technical delegate. And I'm going to tell you more about them later. But just to give you a sense of what our panelists are about, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about international physical education and a little bit of how Chris Shelton's career interfaced with that movement. Before Smith College, Chris spent her early years after college going into the Peace Corps and traveled to Venezuela. She also trained future Peace Corps volunteers later in Puerto Rico. After that, she was a high school teacher, a coach, a college coach, an athletic director. She was president of NAGWAS at one point. She's been a consultant, an administrator in executive offices of both AFERD and AIW. And that's just the beginning of her lifetime work. But it was our good fortune in the fall of 1988 that Smith hired her as assistant professor in exercise and sports studies. Chris was to oversee the graduate program, and for those of you that have been here a while, to replace the formidable Carol Newhoff. For nearly 25 years, she recruited graduate students, assigned placements, worked with students and head coaches. Her Smith career includes publications, hundreds of presentations and keynote addresses, often delivered in Spanish. She served countless organizations as a board member and officer, plenty to earn her the rank of full professor. Over the years, and I said this in our ESS banquet the other night, her Smith colleagues began to understand that although it was her Smith work that grounded her, it was the work with those less fortunate in countries around the world that really inspired her. When she returned from one of her many trips, she simply overflowed with thoughts and emotions from her travels. And the challenge for her was really how to translate those travel experiences into the classroom for Smith graduates and undergraduates. Chris's work internationally reads like the history of women in sport and physical education. We can trace her work to better understand the international sports movement. But Smith's ties to the international sports world began with Smith's own Dorothy Ainsworth, who was the department chair of physical education and co-founded the International Association for Girls and Women in Physical Education and Sport in 1949. This organization was designed to promote a post-World War II understanding among nations through using sport in women. It was also in 1949 when the United Nations claimed the practice of physical education and sport as a fundamental right for all. Yet it was not until 1978 that the International Charter of Physical Education and Sport was adopted by UNESCO, saying, one of the essential conditions for the effective exercise of human rights is that everyone should be free to develop and preserve his or her physical, intellectual, and moral powers, and that access to physical education and sport should consequently be assured and guaranteed for all human beings. So like Ms. Ainsworth, Chris Shelton believes that international sport is a vehicle to promote friendship. You see several of her friends here, understanding and peace among countries. So one of Chris's first travels as assistant professor was to Brighton in the United Kingdom. This was an independent coordinating body of government organizations called the International Working Group, or IWG for short. It aimed to be a catalyst for the advancement and empowerment of women in sport globally. Their first World Conference was held in Brighton in 1994 with more than 280 delegates from 82 countries. And yes, Chris Shelton was one of those delegates. The Brighton Declaration was created. It was a statement of principles designed to accelerate change and redress the imbalances that women face in participation and involvement in sport. The 90s became a prolific year for international sport. Also in 1994, the International Olympic Committee requested a need for action on women in sport, resulting in the IOC establishing a working group on women in sport that eventually became a commission in 2004. This commission meets once a year to monitor the participation of women in the Olympics as well as their representation in decision-making. They have also organized quadrennial conferences on women in sports to assess progress and define actions. So from Brighton, the IWG went to Nambia, the second World Conference, once again attended by Chris, which called for the promotion of sports as a means to realize broader goals in health, education, and women's human rights. This notion was strengthened in the World Conference in Montreal, and the fourth IWGA World Conference was held in Kumamoto, Japan, where our panelists, Kanai and Chris, collaborated on a number of presentations. In 1995, Chris traveled to Beijing as a member of the Women's Sports Foundation delegation to United Nations Fourth World Conference on Women. The Beijing platform provided important policy recommendations on women, gender equality, and sports. By 1997, Chris rose to the ranks of VP of that renowned organization that Ainsworth founded nearly 5 decades earlier. And in fact, in 1999, she brought their entire International Congress to Smith to celebrate their 50th anniversary. Chris has also spent a lifetime of work in Latin America, bringing sport opportunities to women and girls. This started with her early work in the Division of Girls and Women in Sport Latin America project. This brought conferences and clinics to several South American countries. Chris has worked with the Colombian Olympic Committee and was a keynote speaker at their first ever Women in Sport Association. Again, in their native language. I'm always impressed by that. Chris is on the advisory board of Women's Sport International, which you're going to hear more about, and served on the board of the IWGA. This fall, Chris returned to Smith after 2 years as resident director of Presco, Smith's study abroad program in Spain, where she became quite an expert in southern Spain dancing. Chris's research and theoretical work followed her passion for international advocacy. She focused on international issues for women's education, sport, and physical activity, and equity issues, which often crossed race, gender, and class. She has had her finger on the pulse of women's international sport movement for close to 4 decades. In honor of this remarkable work, we have assembled colleagues and friends of Chris to share with you their expertise on the international sports movement today and that in the United States. We challenge the panelists to think about how we can best ensure this systemic and effective integration of a gender perspective in all areas of the world and in all levels of sport. The relationship between gender equality and sport is not solely about achieving equality in women's participation and treatment within sports, but it's also about promoting sport for gender equality or harnessing the potential of sport for social empowerment of women and girls. Sport offers a valuable channel to strengthen women and girls' capabilities and provide information on important social issues such as health, HIV/AIDS, and women's rights. Women's and girls' participation in sport can also challenge gender stereotypes and break down entrenched discriminatory attitudes and behaviors. So how do we move forward on gender equality in sport and on the empowerment of women and girls through sports worldwide? Hopefully our panelists will give some insight into that. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce each one of them formally, and then we'll proceed with their talks. In the order of presentation, Dr. Ani Kroni, who is the current president of Women's Sport International and professor of sports psychology, pedagogy, and sports coaching at Inland Norway University of Applied Sciences. She's coordinated the European Union-funded higher education program, Gender and Equity Issues at the University of Thessaly. She organized the first international forum on youth sport with a gender perspective in Greece and has served on the UNESCO advisory group. Ani remains active within competitive alpine skiing, acting as a technical delegate for the International Ski Federation. Dr. Kroni will speak on the impact of women's organizations and gender equity in sport. Kari Fasting is the professor emeriti at the Department of Social and Cultural Studies at the Norwegian School of Sports Sciences. She became the first elected chair of this institution and served as director from 1989 to 1994. She is a past president and honorary member of the International Sociology of Sport Association. She was a founding member of Women's Sport International and served as its president. Her most recent work is with the Norwegian Olympic, Paralympic, and Confederation of Sport, assisting them in a project in Norway about gender equality in sports with a focus on female coaches and administrative leaders. Her talk today will focus on the impact of sexual harassment on women's participation in sport. Dr. Sean Latta is a professor in the Department of Kinesiology at Manhattan College. Prior to becoming a faculty member, Sean coached at MIT and later at Columbia University as its soccer coach. She is past president of the National Association of Girls and Women in Sport and represented NAGWAS with Shape America board of directors. Sean served as the Journal of Physical Education and Recreation Dance editorial board chair and was most recently recognized as a North American Society of Health, PE, Recreation, Sports, and Dance Professional Fellow. Dr. Latta will talk today on the passage of Title IX and what's happening with Where's Wanda? In closing our panel discussion is Dr. Kanai Hanishi, a soccer coach and lecturer at Mount Holyoke College. We're proud to say that Kanai graduated from our ES program in 2007 and has coached at Mount Holyoke ever since. While coaching, she completed her doctorate in sports pedagogy. She has published her studies in coaching female athletes and presented multiple workshops and lessons at the IWA conference in Japan. Kanai is a former member of the Japanese national women's soccer team and today is an active member of the Japanese Association for Women in Sports. Dr. Hanishi will talk on a life-changing moment, the power of mentorship for women. So each panelist will talk for about 15 minutes. We'll hear from all four panelists, and then we'll have a question and answer period following that. So Dr. Crony, will you start us?
Thank you very much for this wonderful introduction. First, I'd like to thank Chris for this wonderful event to bring us all together, and thank also Smith College for having us here. I also enjoyed the hospitality of Smith College back in 2009 when I spent my sabbatical here, and always happy to come back. Today I think it's a very special day. Is this better? Okay. Thank you for this help. I will spend some time talking about the impact of women's organizations on gender equity in sport. It is, I guess, important to start with the whole idea of gender equity, because sometimes we are limiting when we think about gender equity, just thinking about achieving some balance in numbers. So many girls, so many boys, so many different sports at the Olympics for men, so many for the women. But that's not what it's all about. There is so much more that gender equity is. There is so much more about maximizing the potential of women and girls and all that sport can offer to them. Empowering women, it is much wider than, unfortunately, a lot of people are limiting in what it is and what we're looking for in it. And it is important. It took a lot of years to persuade people why gender equity or equality. Sometimes I'm saying that you can call it anything you want to, but it is important to understand why it is so significant. It can impact the person, but not only the person, the whole society. It can impact the development, the personal development, the individual development, and the societal development. It can impact on many different levels the person. We're talking about women's health, physical health, mental health. We also, it is also, there is an impact on the financial, the economic aspect. So the impact that women's participation in sport can have, as we all know, it is much greater than we think sometimes it is. Unfortunately, it took us very long to persuade people. For many years, the idea was that sport participation can hurt women. It was not too long ago that we had a statement from the International Ski Federation president how ski jumping was not appropriate for women, and because they could hurt. So as we see the years go by, things are changing, and we do know now, and it is appropriate. And but still, it is great to know that that's not the reality in most places. There are still a lot of countries, there are still a lot of people, a lot of different cultures where sport is not what we think, at least us in this room, it is. As you might have heard at some point, I was teaching in Greece. I am from Greece. Originally, I was born and raised in Greece until I moved in 91 here close by at Springfield College, where I did part of my graduate studies. It is very different. This morning, actually, I saw on Facebook discussing from one of the women's and sport organizations back in Greece, and last night they hosted this fashion show, this Oscar de la Renta fashion show. And I was so upset this morning about what does this have to do with women and sports. I did not hit the like or dislike on it or any other button. I just scrolled down, closed it, and got it over with. But I had to share. So we know that in many countries, physical education is still not an option for girls. It is not available for them. They're forbidden. Participation in some sports, in many sports. We saw that it was only recently and until a lot of pressure that some of the Islamic countries did allow women to participate in the Olympics. So it has been a long history of changes, a long history of trying to persuade people why sport matters. Why sport matters for all. But while we have had tremendous achievements and progress, there's still a lot of work to be done. This idea of the women and sport movement, well, the most important thing to remember, it is about changing things. It is about bringing change for women in sport, for all women. As you might have heard in the introduction, I am currently serving as the president on Women in Sport International. And in the past few years, Lynn actually mentioned it, it was in 1978 where UNESCO published the International Charter. If you look back, if you ever take a chance to look back at that document, those words, girls, women, gender, do not exist. And in 2014, they commissioned a revision of the Charter that actually was passed by the UN Assembly in 2015. And finally, words like women, girls, gender, or in it. Sexual harassment, sexual exploitation, or in the document, in the new document. But it took a lot of work, it took a lot of effort to make this change. So it is about all these organizations, starting from local to national organizations, where a lot of people are trying to make some change happen. While the women's movement has been much longer, for many, many years, the women in sport movement did not have support from them. In post the 2000 decade, we do get some support from them, and there is actually the matter of sport is right there. It is on the table, and we believe that this is because of all the work that women in sport organizations have done in all these years. Early on, there was a realization that without some organizational power, we cannot achieve change. So a lot of organizations started forming up. I'm gonna spend a little time on going through some organizations. There's no way I can cover everything. There are hundreds right now out there. And it is, we have governmental organizations, we have international and national sport organizations, and specifically women's organizations. We have people in sports science areas, anywhere in the sports science academic world, and physical education organizations. We have men and women all over this world really working on this movement on women in sport. And things started early on. As Wim mentioned, the very first organization that we have was established in 1949, and it is IPESCAVE, the International Association for PE and Sport for Girls and Women. However, if we look a little bit more in the history, there is another organization that was formed a little earlier. It's not so much of an international one. It was a national, it was a French organization. And it is very interesting because it was formulated in 1918, kind of early. And the focus was to go against the barriers that women were facing at that point with being involved in track and field. And they did manage to challenge IOC and IAAF. They did manage that. They were quite radical. IPESCAVE, it is the oldest that we have, and it has had tremendous impact on the physical educators. It is an organization that places a lot of focus on physical education. It was established for that reason. And as you heard, it was Barbara Ainsworth from Smith College, where she helped establish, all the state, regional, and national organizations here. And then with her international experience, she went further on and started IPESCAVE. The interesting thing is that, as history has it, a big part of Ainsworth was to support the physical education as a feminine appropriate task, and that can also allow for mass participation for women, while at the same time she was not supporting competition, okay, the competitive elements. IPESCAVE has actually their Congress, it's the 62nd round, if I'm not mistaken, the 62nd Congress of IPESCAVE starts today, tomorrow. And it is the oldest Congress that we have around the world, specifically on women and sport. And it did manage to mobilize, to bring women together, and to bring also other organizations together, many actors together, to talk about all around physical education in sports. However, the big criticism for this organization is still that it's a little bit rather conservative, and it was not very radical. So later on, we saw the development because of this criticism of other organizations that tried to tackle things a little bit more radically. In between, we have a time where we see during the 70s, we see a lot of national women's organizations forming up in the US, and even long before the Women's Sports Foundation. We have in the US the National Association for Girls and Women in Sport. We have in the UK, in Canada, in Australia. And then we start at a time where we see a lot of regional and continental women's sports developing around the 90s in Europe, around the Commonwealth area, the Arab women, the Asian women, the African women, and finally IOC, they do see the light. IOC usually, they do their own thing. They tend to be a little late, but they always get there. And yes, there was a need to develop this Women in Sport Commission. In the 90s, after the 92 Australia conference of ice-escalating, there were a lot of discussions that started about this criticism that I mentioned, that certain things were not addressed, and specifically, especially about sports. It was not, ice-escalating was not touching a lot on women in sports. So in 1993, Women's Sport International was formed. It was launched in 1994, but the beginning was earlier. It is an organization that is an advocacy organization that is evidence-based, and it is so important to bring the most positive change we can about all women, for all women, from all different countries. We would like to be able to represent as many as we could. Another criticism that all women in sport organizations have received is about the women who serve in these organizations, that are the typical white Western females that cannot really understand everything about this world. In all the years, at least with WSI, we have tried and we have, I think, succeed to a big extent to be as inclusive as possible, to have people on our advisory board from many different regions. I guess one of the criteria when we look about women or people, men and women, in our advisory board, to be as inclusive as possible, as representative as possible of all different continents, of different regions, of different issues, to make sure that everyone is represented there. It is the first international NGO that directly has lobbied with the governments, and our vision is the most change-oriented I think we can have. The big moment in the history of women's movement, as you heard from me, was the Brighton Conference in 1994. It appears that the Brighton Conference really confirmed the necessity and the importance, the meaning of the women in sport movement. Out of Brighton Conference, we had the development after that, the development of the International Working Group on Women in Sport, where it is a presidency that moves every 4 years, is a network of representatives and organizations from different regions who work to monitor and the changes after the Brighton Declaration, and now it's the Brighton plus Helsinki Declaration. Overall, as I said, the aim is to develop sporting culture that enables and values full involvement of women in all aspects of sports. How we do that? We try to raise our awareness, we try to lobby, we try to bring some change, we try to share information, to communicate. We share good practices, we try to coordinate different projects, different activities. We try to coordinate some joint projects among us. And the one that is the most important one is to monitor progress, and it's the most difficult one, as also I will say a little bit later. Networking and support, it is one of the most important things. In this networking and support, this opportunity to get together and to share things. The impact. Yes, there is progress. Yes, there is growth. Yes, there is impact. If we can say that this impact is directly from the women in sport organizations, I don't know. We don't have the data to tell exactly. If we say that this impact we see is directly from the implementation of Brighton Declaration, I don't know. We don't know. We lack some of this data. IWG, one of the things that IWG does in recent years is producing this quadrennial report and Patty Fasting has worked with the past reports. And there, finally, we have some monitoring of certain things that are changing within 4 years. But even there, it is very specific focus of what they try to monitor. We do lack a global system that will monitor the whole movement and how things are progressing for girls and women in sport. So yes, right now we know that attitudes have changed, but we also know that women's participation in PE and sport has increased. But yeah, we also know that women in sport leadership are much more represented now, or much more present there. But human rights are much more sensitive, women sensitive today. But we have laws. Oh my God, we have so many laws around this world. We have all these declarations. We have all these different papers, all white papers, I don't know, black papers, gray papers. We have everything. Everything is right there. It's on paper, and we have it. But what we know is that things have not changed everywhere and for all women and girls. Discrimination is still there. That's why I'm saying, yes, we have succeeded and we have really had great opportunities and we have jumped on those, but there's still a lot of work to be done. In the most recent IWG report, it was that right now in the last 4 years, and that is between the 2010 Sydney presidency and the 2014 Finland presidency, in those years, we saw most of action and most of work being done in Africa and Asia, and the least in Europe. We also saw that most of the project, most of the work was going to increase participation, is still to increase participation for women in sport and PE, and then also in the next kind of activities that had a high number of action was to educate, okay, to put gender equality into education, to develop training programs and provide and deliver training programs. So, yes, there is impact. The big problem, we don't know exactly everything that is progressing around the world. In 2004, UNESCO, in their fourth MINEPS, which is the Conference of Ministers in Sport around the world, they announced the establishment, the launch of this observatory in women in sport. That was in 2004, November of 2004. We are right now in May of 2017. This observatory does not exist. It never happened. Chris took up the project, so it never happened. Yes. And so now we're going to go 13 years behind, and in the new MINEPS conference that will take place in July, we're going to try an action, and the action will be to do a feasibility study for the Women's Observatory. While it was supposed to be launched, now we're going quite some steps back to study. Can we do it? So sometimes it's so frustrating. We're taking one step forward and about 5 steps back, and then we're running forward again. And we know that today, gender equity is at the center of attention. It's supposed to be one of the 2 primary goals for UN, for UNESCO. It is there for IOC. And we have it. It was in the Millennium Development Goals. It is mentioned in the Sustainable Development Goals. It is now in the International Charter. It is there in the new project that they have on women that IOC launched a few weeks, a month ago. But still, these words do not directly translate into actions. As I shared with you, UNESCO revised the International Charter, but when now comes to the Ministers' Convention in July, the action is the feasibility study. To my eyes, this is a preparatory action. This is not an action, when supposedly this is one of your 2 most important goals. So today we're here for Chris. Okay, and believe it or not, Chris has been somewhere everywhere. She was the president of NHWS. She was with Pescare. She was involved with IWG and also representative with IXP. With IOC, she worked for an incredible project that was launched with collaboration with Birmingham University, looking after IOC had announced the targets in '99, the 10 and 20%. Chris's beginning and her work, the work that she did in Latin America, it has been the best thing, and she transferred that into the women in sports movement, and she really helped us learn a lot. In 2004, when we had the Paralympic Congress in Greece, Chris was there, and she introduces back then to this woman, Rosa. Rosa today is the president of Pescare, Rosa Lopez D'Amico. She's the president, and Chris mentored her. So Chris, in my eyes, she has offered us a lot. She, as I met Chris back in 1993, I believe, when I was still a student at Springfield College. She was a friend with my advisor, Mimi, and I got introduced to Chris. Since then, she has been a mentor, inspiration, friend, colleague, everything. And
Good afternoon. I need one more hand, one for the manuscript, one for this, and one for the computer. Let me see if we can get out of this. There we go. Yes, dear Chris, I would also like to start like Arne did. Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you Smith College also for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here again because, as you heard, I'm retired, so I have been here many times. And I'm very happy that I can take part in this celebration of Chris. I have actually known Chris since 1983. There was a huge conference on women and sport, and I think it was the first one I participated in the States, called the New Agenda, which was a very special experience for everyone who was there, but particularly for a young Norwegian. Chris and I have participated in all these organizations and meetings that you saw. We have been to conferences together, we have been to meetings together, we have visited many countries, and at the last 20 years my research area has been sexual harassment in the sport, and I've also worked as an expert consultant for UNICEF and IOC and different Olympic committees. And every time when this theme that 20 years ago people didn't want to talk about at all has been discussed, Chris has been very supportive. So even though she has not directly been involved in some of the studies, she has contributed to the development of the area. And that's very important because often people don't say anything, but Chris has always been active and supportive in this work. So then, to my presentation. What I would like to do today, I've been asked to talk, that was the title, about the impact of sexual harassment. But we have to know what we are talking about, and I'm sure there are people in the audience who knows a lot about this, and someone who maybe don't know that much. So I will talk a little bit about what are we talking about, i.e. definitions at the beginning. And then I will show you some figures from around the world about prevalence. I will talk a little bit about the perpetrators, and then about the impacts. And I would also like to end with talking a little bit about prevention. Because a lot of things have happened, which is very positive. And normally when I talk about this theme, the audience gets more and more depressed because it's, I will come up with this statistic and the new studies and the things. But actually I have something to tell you which I think is very positive. So what are we talking about? I separate here between gender, sexual harassment and abuse. An umbrella here could be sexual violence. And it's difficult because there are so many concepts around here, and particularly for a non-English person, but also if you talk with Americans use, for example, in almost all the literature, they use sexual assault for what we use sexual abuse. Now, we don't have sexual abuse in Norwegian language, but like what the people in England do, for example. And then United Nations use gender-based violence. That is in all documents, the same European Union and Council of Europe are doing. And Celia Brackenridge introduced in relation to sport non-accidental violence a couple of years ago, because there are violence which is according to the rules in some sports, also there are rules or regulations. So we found it was problematic to use violence as an umbrella concept. But let me just stick to these. Gender harassment refers to a broad range of verbal and non-verbal behaviors, not aiming at sexual cooperation, but conveying insulting, hostile, and degrading attitudes about one's gender. There is a lot of gender harassment going on, and particularly in sport, and particularly in areas where women have not participated, and which is dominated by the other gender. Sexual harassment, on the other hand, refers to behavior towards an individual or group that involves sexualized, verbal, non-verbal, or physical behavior, whether intended or unintended. This is important because, it's still sexual harassment, even though if it's unintended, because it's the person, the definition is a subjective definition. The definition is in the hand of the person. And it's very often based upon an abuse of power and trust that is considered by the victim or a bystander to be unwanted or coerced. So unwanted is almost always independent, and in this country you see it's in the definition. I'm not going to talk particularly about sexual abuse, but I have to mention it because there is a grey zone between this. It goes from discrimination, gender harassment, sexual harassment, and abuse, or sexual assault, as some of you may probably say. And so it's not that easy, and it depends about the situation, and it depends on the age, so that you can't say that, sometimes you can't say that this is sexual harassment and this is abuse. But there is some difference, and the core in the definitions of sexual abuse is that it's non-consensual sexual contact that is forced or coerced. So rape or attempted rape would be an example. But then comes the complicated here, particularly if you're going to do research on it. Behaviors that are characterized as sexual harassment may also be considered as sexual abuse, depending on the context. the severity, the age of the victim, and the local legal system, because the legal system is very different in different countries. So the same behavior done, for example, towards me and towards a 10-year-old will be meant called sexual harassment, but it would definitely be called sexual abuse. And there are psychologists who always call it abuse when it's about children. I have some example here, then it's maybe easier for you. Oh, skipped. I just do it like this. It can be verbal, non-verbal, or physical. I just don't read this, you can see it yourself, but for example, ridicule or sexist jokes about women and men, girls and boys in general. Very good. Ridiculing is a very good example of gender harassment often. Women and girls shouldn't do this or this. And of course this unwanted touching and this example of physical and being shown pictures of things with unwanted sexual content. And these days there is a lot going on in relation to Facebook, SMS, etc. I show you some quotes from different studies that I have done, so it comes a little bit more lively for you. Not in a positive way. But for example, this is from a study I did in Czech Republic. It happens quite often that people try to hug people, but with this particular coach, it's very clear that it was in a sexual context. So you have to be really insistent to keep him away from yourself. I experienced it as unpleasant. It mainly happens during the training where he uses opportunities, like when someone is coming to practice and he comes to hug and says, "I'm really glad to see you." But during the hug he can move his hands on the body, which is unpleasant. Another one from Norway. When we didn't perform well, then the punishment was that we should sit on his lap. I remember I thought it was horrible. He touched us and it was really very displeasing. I don't understand today that we accepted it at all. We had a drill where we had to sprint, and the one who came last had to sit on his lap. So everyone was running like hell. This was an athlete I interviewed, I think she was 21 or 22 then, but this happened to her when she was 14. And the last one example. He says things in a way that maybe is meant as a joke, but sometimes I get very hurt by it. He can, for example, say something about that I have too small boobs or comments on other parts of my body. And it doesn't at all have anything to do with the sport I'm competing in. Here are some figures. I've taken 4 large studies. One from UK, one from Belgium and Netherlands, one I've done myself in Zambia, and a recent one from Quebec, from Canada. The point here is that the knowledge that we have, it's we know more about children, but for example, the study from UK, there they interviewed or surveyed people from 18 to 22 years old, students, and they asked them about what happened to them before they were 16 years of age. I'm sure there are researchers in this area, there are some problems with these retrospective things. The other one, the big study from Belgium and Netherlands, participation from 18 to 50 years old, asked them about what happened to them before they were 18 years. I just did this study without, I just did like what we call threshold studies, asked them if they had experienced so-and-so. It was both coaches and athletes in Zambia. But the study from Quebec is the only study I know about actually. They were 14 to 17 years old, and she asked them what had happened to them last year. The point here that look at these figures. I mean, they vary from 66% to 0.2%. So you can understand, because people define sexual harassment differently, they also measure it differently. And then they have different, and then, you know, when you do retrospective study, or if you do, have you ever experienced, that's what one often does, or one go in like they did in Quebec and ask about last year. There is another thing here. And girls are sexually harassed more than boys. That's something which is shown in many studies. But in the study in Zambia and also the study in Quebec, there is no gender differences, statistically significant gender differences. And we see, or we learn more and more about boys compared to 20 years ago, and we think that there is a lot of things we don't know, particularly in relation to sport. Here is another important result, and there are other studies confirming this. Because ethnic minority, LGBT athletes, and elite level athletes, and disabled athletes are harassed, or she used the word sexual violence, and it's actually the way she measures it is a combination of sexual harassment and abuse. But they experience significantly more harassment than the total sample, as you can see. Then something about the perpetrator. The first study that we did and also the course I did was about the coach. But we now know from more study that, of course, the impact is very severe from the course, but there is a lot of peers harassment going on. And look at these figures, because it's these three studies from UK and from Zambia, and from athletes 60-60 compared to 21, sexual harassment, which is from Zambia, 50 compared to 38, and I use the term that they are using, the researchers, of sexual violence, which is from Belgium and Netherlands, 33 and 17. This also says something about the culture and the milieu, and I think from an educational point of view, this is very important also, that we look more into peer harassment and peer abuse. Then impacts. Impacts of sexual harassment can be very severe. It's not only impact on the athletes, it's also on the sports organization. At the athletes, it can have psychological effects, physical and somatic effects, and also, of course, in relation to work and school and sport. I remember some of it was the first study I did in Norway, and the interviews there, what we would call, or whatever, relatively lighter forms of sexual harassment can have a very severe impact. I interviewed a girl, and I remember it's many years ago now, because this had happened to her 10 years before, and it wasn't, it was lighter forms of sexual harassment. It was still bothering her. She was thinking of it, she tried to avoid this person, the person was still around in the sport, etc. So just to show you some impacts it can have on the organization. It can, of course, you know this here in America, you have had some of these famous universities, you have had some big cases, so it's the reputational damage, which also is a problem for that. That's one of the reasons why they try to not talk or write about it or taking people to court. Loss of players, loss of sponsorship, etc. But for the athletes, mental health issues like depression, anxiety, physical illnesses and injuries, low self-esteem, emotional, volatile, is that how you pronounce it? Mood states, increased dropouts. When I did one study in Norway, it was elite level athletes. This was 25 interviews I did, and it turned out that 4 of them they were elite level athletes still, but in another sport. They had left their sport. That was a very surprising, because 4 of 25 is quite a lot. Disrupted relationship, not only, unfortunately, in relation to coach, but coaches in general often, and also in relation to people outside sport. Economic losses it can be, and decline in practice and performance. Here are some examples. It has been years since I have been able to be close to a boy. I just don't trust them. So for someone that I cared about, I throw it away because, I just don't trust them. When I read my diary that I wrote 10 years ago, I realized the same things are bothering me today. This disturbs me, makes me nervous, anxious, and makes it difficult to sleep. And one from Czech. As time went on, he started to act like I was his property. I heard from him that I should take off some weight and what I should eat or shouldn't eat. And then, of course, he tried to seduce me as he tried to seduce many other women. He was married and I didn't want to have any relationship with him. She was also talked a lot about how this bothered her long time afterwards. So my last point is a little bit about prevention, because so what? As 20 years ago we didn't have any studies. Now we have studies, and it's going on in many countries, and there are not that denial that it was 20 years ago. So we see very many prevention initiatives. And many of them are related to education. We think it's very important to have this in all coach education, but not only to educate the coaches, it's also very important to educate the athletes. Many of the athletes doesn't know that this is not okay. And also in relation to, particularly, as you see some sport, but children also educate the parents. Because of time, I just put up some that has information that has been developed. This one is from Finland. This one is some study we did for UNICEF. This is from UK. This is from Council of Europe and European Union. This is Norway. This is Germany. And this is IOC. And I would like to tell you what IOC has been doing and are doing at the moment, because in 2006 there have been some cases on elite level athletes, and they wonder if this really was going on. So they gathered the people who was doing research at that time, and that was 12 people from Canada to Australia to and out who presented what we knew at that time, and they make the first position statement. That was in 2006. So after that, they developed, and I wish I had the time, but I don't, but you can go and find it yourself, some educational material, particularly some videos, which illustrates the different kind of harassment and abuse. And because, as you all know, IOC has a lot of money, so they did this very professionally. So they became very good. One of the things was that they had a firm in UK developing it, and they used professional actors. So after that, in was it 2016, we developed a broader position statement, included other forms of violence or of harassment than only sexual. And what they did at the Olympics in Brazil, and what they are going to do now in the future, they had a welfare officer and they had a reporting system. And there is a report, but we are not allowed to see it, but there was cases that was reported and it was handled. And they're going to have that for the future Olympics. And at the Youth Olympic Games, they have an educational package or an educational project. They have also developed now two guidelines for national Olympic committees and international sport federations, and they have one person working now for 1 year with developing a toolkit. So they have really changed. As a part of this, I was thinking in relation to the title that all this preventing work can also be looked upon as impact of sexual harassment, because we wouldn't have had it if we wouldn't have had these studies, I think. My last picture is that I have, together with some other women, worked for over 2 years now to try to establish a new NGO, a charity that's complicated to be registered in the UK, just forgot. It's a new international agency, and we call it Safe Sport International, and we seek to end violence and abuse against athletes. SSI, which is the abbreviation, setting the standard for the minimum infrastructure that should be in place internationally and nationally to safeguard athletes involved in sport, developing and communicating safeguarding practices for sport, and assisting organizations with their capacity to deliver safe sport through training and consultancy. And find your almanac and write down this date, 21 and 22nd of November. We invite you all to Madrid. As you see here, this is a picture of Madrid. And to the launch of this organization, Post International Convention for Safe Sport. This is not an academic conference. This is a conference where we will present the latest research, but it's first of all about practice and prevention and policy. It's like treating research, policy, and prevention. So thank you and welcome to Madrid.
Thank you, my esteemed colleagues, and I want to thank Chris and Smith College for inviting me and being part of this wonderful celebration. And so I'm going to offer a few comments related to our infamous Title IX law. And the title of my remarks are from the passage of Title IX to Where's Wanda? And so I would like, this is really, these comments a tribute to Chris Shelton, for legacy, Smith College, NAGWS, and international sport. And of course I had to include a book written by Dorothy Ainsworth. So as I said, the title of my talk from the passage of Title IX to Where's Wanda? Well, most of us remember the iconic figure, I think anyway, that appeared in the 1980s, named Waldo. And Waldo's elusiveness was both legendary and comical, popping up at random times and disappearing without explanation. The world began asking, where's Waldo? Well, fast forward to 2017, we're asking today, where's Wanda? Waldo, aka Wanda, serves as a metaphor into the dwindling number of women coaches in the race today. So as we all know, Title IX, the law that requires equal opportunities in education, is 45 years young on June 23rd. And while we've seen much progress, we have a long way to go. And we've seen huge participation gains in student-athlete opportunities, yet we've seen Comparable leadership opportunities on the coaching and administrative fronts decline. Where's Wanda? Acosta and Carpenter, as many of us know, longitudinal study, continues to document that in 1972, 90% of female athletic teams were coached by women, and today only 43.4%. 98% of men's teams are coached by men, and actually Linda Carpenter says we'll really see progress when we actually are hiring women for men's teams. But note this, when the athletic director is female, there are typically a higher percentage of female coaches. Where's Wanda? The noticeable decrease in females coaching women collegiate teams is considered one of the unintended consequences of Title IX. As female athletics gained respectability and financial support, more men viewed coaching women as a viable profession and financial alternative. Here's a Wanda, well, Dawn Mondes Daly, who just won the national championship, her team in South Carolina. And her quote, a lot of people notice when you succeed, but they don't see what it takes to get there. We continue to see the double standard as a male coach and a female coach in collegiate athletics. Well, some positive, perhaps, results. Recent Title IX lawsuits fired University of Iowa athletics official awarded $1.4 million in a lawsuit recently. And again, it really was retaliation. She spoke out about unfairness. They made up some reason and fired her. University of Minnesota Duluth, another ongoing lawsuit, fired the hockey coach. They didn't want to pay her salary. Anyway, and they fired a softball coach, and that's ongoing. Christine Grant, longtime Iowa women's athletic director, 1973 to 2000. Sure, it infuriates her, all that how she built Iowa's program. And she said recently, I thought immediately this was a much, much needed win for women in athletics across the entire country. From my observations over 40 years, women in athletics particularly are very, very hesitant to speak up when they think things are not the way they ought to be because they pay such a high price for speaking up. I can't tell you the number of women personally who have been released from athletic departments simply because they tried to get the athletic department to do the right thing. Another Christine Grant quote. I mean, she's just hopeful that this is going to put pressure. Institutions don't want this negative publicity. Where are the presidents? Where are the board of trustees? What other civil rights law it's okay to say, well, maybe we'll be in compliance in a few years? Where's Wanda? These examples and beyond beg the question, why? Why are successful female coaches losing their jobs? What are the real reasons? Are they justified? What's happening to them? The answers to these questions are both mysterious and vague. This leads to the question, what happened to Wanda? It has been alluded to the female coaches, maybe it's a work-life balance. Maybe it's the higher and higher expectations in coaching. Misogynist, sexist, and homophobic attitudes. I mean, how is Wanda navigating this culture? I was a coach for 11 years. I haven't seen that much of a change. I hear the same stories. And myths are propagated. You have Gino Auriemma saying, at the Final Four, they interviewed him, and he said, oh, it's simple. The women don't want to coach. They have other career options. They're picking other careers. Well, Tara Vanderveer, she was livid. I mean, she came right back and said, really, Gino? Plenty of women that want to coach. But she pointed out when men sexually harass and they get fired, they get hired the next day. Women, when they get fired, they get blackballed and they don't get hired again. Well, a few actions going forward. My esteemed colleague Ani pointed a few things. Increased number of female athletic directors. Easier said than done, but the stats show female athletic directors, there's more intentionality in hiring female coaches. And something I've seen more and more in the research, pointing to expanding the definition of gender role expectations, less narrowly defined. Pressure on board of trustees and presidents being compliant with Title IX. Reducing total number of football scholarships, so more opportunities for all. Why do we have 90-some scholarships? The NFL only has 50 guys on a roster. Doesn't make sense. So we need continued vigilance and action to increase opportunities for girls and women in sport as athletes, coaches, referees, administrators. We need more Wandas. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Hi. My name is Kanae Haneshi. I am the 2007 Smith ESS graduate program graduate, and I currently serve as a head soccer coach at Nagoya College. But I am also a member of Japanese Association for Women in Sports. So today I'd like to share about importance of mentoring to develop next female leaders in sports by introducing Japanese mentoring opportunity for Japanese women in sports, and sharing my personal story about how Chris Shelton's mentoring helped me to be where I am. So study has shown that mentoring individuals who has mentor reported greater career satisfaction, greater career commitment, career mobilities, and a more positive job attitude than the ones that who do not have mentors. That's because they have access to the inside knowledge, and they tend to have more energy, and they tend to set larger goals. Also, mentoring system allowed knowledge, expertise, secrets, and tips and tricks of masters to be passed on to the next generation. And the relationship between mentor and the mentee typically helps mentor to identify and address critical issues which provide a sense of making a contribution to future generation. And the mentors can foster a sense of belongings within the professional development environment by facilitating relationship outside of one-on-one relationship, and helps to create the networking for mentees. So in Japan, my first life-changing moment is to become a member of Japanese Association for Women in Sports called JUICE. Through the organization, I have met several female leaders in Japanese sports, including in Dr. Etsuko Ogasawara, the chair of the organization, as well as Miss Miyuki Kobayashi, the leader of the Japanese women's soccer. I had an opportunity to travel to Paris with JUICE members to attend second IOC World Women's Sports Conference in 2000. This is a picture at the time. And JUICE member helped me to connect with other female leaders in sports at the conference. That was my first opportunity to see international stage of women in sports, and yes, that was my eye-opening experience. And since Japan is hosting 2020 Tokyo Olympics, there are several projects are going on currently in order to develop and support female leaders and coaches in Japan. For example, Japanese Center for Research on Women in Sports has been organizing the Women's Coaches Academy since 2015. And they just hosted the 2017 Women's Sports Leadership Conference and had the major Japanese sports organizations to sign the Brighton plus Helsinki 2014 declaration. So that's a big thing. And for 2020 Tokyo Olympics, Japan Sports Council is in process of forming the facilitated mentoring system for female coaches in Japan. during the process, I was interviewed to talk about my experiences with Smith ESS program as well as NCAA Women's Coaches Academy. And the Bridge program is one of the long-lasting JUICE projects since 2003, organizing U.S. Women's Soccer Tour every year and providing the cultural exchange opportunities for college-aged women soccer players from the United States and Japan. So now, I'd like to share my story of how Chris Shelton guided me to where I am. And this is just one example of many girls and women who, around the world, who Chris has done the same. Just like the title of my speech, the biggest life-changing moment I had of my life to meet Chris Shelton. I was just one of the student volunteers at the first Asian conference on women in sports in Osaka, Japan in 2001. And during the closing ceremony, Chris approached to our group of student volunteers and thanking us. This was nice. And during the conversation, I briefly mentioned about me wanting to be a soccer coach. And then she immediately responded to say, "Why don't you look at the Smith ESS program?" And I was, okay, Chris's friendly, welcoming approach overcame my limited experience, my language barrier, which I did not speak much English at the time, and our cultural differences. And although I did not know much about the ESS program at the time, I knew because of the Chris's approach that this was my destination. So during the ESS program, thanks to the exceptional mentoring by Chris, other professors like Lynn, other coaches at ESS program, I have learned important life skill in order to be an effective soccer coach and a leader in sports. For example, leadership skills and communication and conflict resolution skills and the coaching skills, and also networking and professional development skills. While I was at ESS program, I had an opportunity to be Chris's translator and an assistant at the 2006 World Women's Sports Conference in Kumamoto, Japan. And that was amazing experience and a networking opportunity for me for my next step in my career. With Chris's mentoring, I had opportunity to get involved in several international girls and women in sports initiatives. So for example, 2009, I traveled to Indonesia for Indonesian Sports for Girls initiatives, and the majority of girls and women in Indonesia has a limited access to sports and other opportunities because of their religion. And this project intended to empower girls and women in Indonesia using sports as a vehicle. And we are able to be in touch with many girls and women in Indonesia through this project. So the left side of the picture are from this project. And in 2014, a group of women soccer coach from Kosovo traveled to this area in Pioneer Valley for Kosovo Women Soccer Coaches Project. So they stayed here for 3 weeks and learned about coaching soccer, women in sports, and coaching youth sports, as well as management and organization skills. When they went back to Kosovo, the participants implemented their knowledge and tools to conduct their own project in their hometown. So the back story is the left side of the Indonesian project. Chris was supposed to travel to Indonesia. And one day she emailed me or called me and said, "Would you like to go to Indonesia?" There's no word no in my Chris dictionary. Yes, please. But that was an amazing opportunity for me, and then thanks. And Chris also taught me to contribute the women in sports through presentation and publications. So these are a few examples that we are able to publish my thesis study from Smith College as one of the chapters in the coaching pedagogy book called New Teaching Games for Understanding, Simply Good Pedagogy. And we also, the next photo was from 2009 World Congress of International Association of Women, Physical Education and Sports for Girls and Women in South Africa. And the left bottom photo is from 2010, 5th IWG conference, a world conference on women and sport in Sydney, Australia. And every time we go to those conferences, Chris always helped me to connect with other female leaders from all over the world. That's one of the skills I learned from Chris, how to connect with others and how to help others to connect with others. She, as you all know, I'm sure, she's very good at it. Say, hi, this is Naya. It is very helpful at the time, and now I learned that skill, so I'm trying to do the same to the people who I try to mentor now. So, study has shown that one of the most critical factors in successful mentoring is the commitment that mentor and mentee possess with each other. Yes, true mentoring goes beyond the professional development, carrying the person as who she is, both in professional and personal lives. These are the photos with Chris Shelton when my family from Japan visited the left side, as well as when I had my two children, one in 2014 and one in 2016. And the backstory is, from this picture, you know Chris is a busy person, right? But she cares about the person who mentors. So this was 30 minutes right before she had a haircut appointment. she takes that 30 minutes for me to see the baby. That's who she is. So my point here is, it is important to create opportunities and systems for formal and informal mentoring in order to develop the next female leaders in sports. Thank you.
I'm sure Chris has volunteered me for several things too. It's hard to say no, right? Like today. I mean, really. No. I want to thank the panelists, but I'd also like to involve the audience now. If you would like to pose a question to our panelists, we'd love to hear from you. Anybody?
I don't want to pose a question, I just want to say, it all seems so like such awesome women.
Yes.
So great. Just was a great presentation.
Manny, I saw you might have a question.
I just didn't know if anyone's seen the documentary Tomboy. That's your, yeah, a lot of women actually talking about adventures, continues.
Thank you. Yep, Tomboy for people's references. Anyone else? Yeah, Erica.
So I am extremely committed to engaging more individuals in sport, but I've also been, before I went to STEM, committed to engaging women in physical activity. And so I'm wondering about the difference in your minds about the power of sport versus the power of physical activity. Because to me, there are some damaging elements of sport that are less pervasive in like general physical activity, but then there's some transformative positive elements of sport that aren't part of simply being physically active. And I'm wondering if you can share your thoughts on why sport is important.
I think it has something to do with how you define power, first of all, and then I think this is varies a lot with cultures. I mean, the power of sport in US is very, very huge compared to in some other countries.
What I would add to what Kari said is that allow the person to choose what they want to engage themselves into, what is meaningful for them. Sports has some benefits, and yes, there are some long-term issues that could develop. Definitely, there's no guarantee there, and physical activity also has its great benefits. So, for me, the answer is allow the person to have a choice to what they want to engage into.
I think it's important to say that top-level sport is very unhealthy. I mean, that's something, it's very unhealthy, it's very detrimental in many ways, and that has been particularly in relation to the body, if you're talking about health. And that has been shown in many studies. So it depends a lot what I'm talking about, you know.
I'm going to second with Annie. I think it's many girls and women around the world, sometimes they don't have a choice. They may be allowed to do just a physical activity, but some of them, I'm sure, you know, if you're an athlete, some people enjoy competing, but they don't have the choice. So I think that allow those girls and women, or you know, the children or people to just have a choice is the important thing.
Maybe I can just say generally, I mean, a common thread, if we look at sport as a positive experience, a common thread between physical activity and sport is overall wellness, spirit, mind, body, and it empowers girls, you know, to have more confidence, to have a higher self-esteem, all of those good things. So I'm all for positive sport and physical activity.
So Chris, a few comments?
I promised that I wouldn't talk about the topic, but I did want to have a few minutes to thank Lynn Oberbilling, especially Rachel Coach, especially Susie Borg, who, with their great patience, have put together this wonderful panel of people I've worked with for many, many years. And I can't thank you enough. I also need to thank the college for giving me the privilege to work here for 29 years and to give me the tools that I needed to do the work that I wanted to do. And that's one of the wonderful things about this college, that they give you, for the most part, the tools you need to accomplish your dreams, your goals, and your research. I have traveled a lot, sat in a lot of meetings and argued with some of these people and agreed with them on other occasions, but for the most part, I just want to thank all of you for coming as far as you come, from Norway, from South Hadley. But it's all good, it's all good. And in international work is very distinct from the way we operate, both the way we run meetings and the way we communicate, the way we use language. But the one thing that always happens is we always need to give a gift to those who have come afar. So I wanted to give all of my colleagues a little Smith memento. And thank you. And I think and Lynn, we have for you. I have gifts for our colleagues. Oh, there we go.
Our poster on the panel. Thank you. So remember Chris.
Almost everyone in this room has been a part of my life in one way or the other, in positive, wonderful ways. And I thank you for being in my life and for being here. And we're now going to go have a nice reception outside. I think we can just go to that.
Yes, we
have
have a poster for you.
Oh, yeah.
Join us outside. The panelists will be there, and we'll have refreshments and continue our good conversation.
Thank you.
Yes.